Hey everyone, this week we're going to be talking about how you can remove people from your photography using Lightroom and Photoshop. So sometimes when you go out to take photos, it doesn't matter where you go or what time of day it is, there's always going to be other people around. Particularly if you're going to quite a popular place or a touristy place. And obviously they've got every right to be there just as much as we do, but sometimes unfortunately they do ruin the shot. So what can we do about it? Well, we can use post-production methods and software to remove them. And I'm going to talk about a few techniques right now using Lightroom and Photoshop. Okay, so the first thing you need to consider is, do you actually need to remove the people from your scene? It will depend on what genre of photography you're doing, but even in something like landscape photography, it can look good if you've got a focal subject of a person or people in your scene. If we look at this one, for example, this was taken in my local woodland area on a nice foggy morning, and it wouldn't be a bad shot by itself. You've got the tree here on the left, which is the main part of the composition. You've got the path leading up, and obviously the fog's creating some nice depth in the image. But with these people who just happened to be walking around the corner as I took the shot, it actually gives the eye something to focus on. You've got the leading line of the path, you've got the frame of the tree, and your eye is naturally drawn to that area with the people. So it's a nice little subject, and I don't want to remove those people. If we look at this one, this was taken at Ribblehead Viaduct. The main focus is obviously the viaduct. I was taking shots with my wide angle to start with, and I've got the full viaduct in, and they were in colour with the sunset. But this particular one I zoomed in, and I wanted to show the scale of the viaduct. So with these two people who were walking into the scene, I decided to just leave them in there. It would be very easy to remove them, but I thought it just helped to show the scale of the viaduct and added something to the image. So you don't always need to remove people, so think about whether the people will actually add something to your image or not. But if you've decided you definitely want to remove some people from your image, we're going to have to start looking at ways we can do that. And the simplest and easiest way to remove people from your image is just to crop them out. If we take a look at this shot, this was taken at Yorkshire Sculpture Park. We've got the nice sculpture here on the left, and we've got a group of people. I don't particularly mind the lady stood here, but the people here looking around and taking photos, I think they're a little bit distracting, so I want to get rid of those. So I can literally just crop in here from the right, and we've got rid of them, simple as that. Like I said, I don't mind having the lady, it shows some scale with the sculpture there. But let's say I did want to get rid of the lady, and I can't really crop in anymore because I'm going to start getting strange compositions if I do that. So what I'm going to do is, in this instance, remove her using the spot removal tool right here in Lightroom. So it's just up here. And we can use our brush, we can use the square brackets, that's the two keys to the left of the return key on the keyboard. The right square bracket will make the brush bigger, the left will make it smaller. And I'm just going to go over the lady like that, and Lightroom will automatically try to work out the best place to sample from to clone her out. And we might just have to move that around just a little bit, just to get it looking right. Maybe around about there. And that's not too bad of a job. We might just need to clone again, because we look here, we've got some ghosts just of her feet which are remaining. So I'm just going to get the spot removal tool again, and I'm just going to go over that bit there, and I'm going to pull that down here, and that's not too bad now. You can do a better job of that if you take a little bit longer, but you can see how quickly you can patch that up. That was before, and that's getting rid of her. Sometimes though, we can't use the tools in Lightroom, and we have to take it into Photoshop. If we look at this image, this was down in Dorset. I'm just going to zoom in on these people up here, the fishermen. We can take the spot removal tool, and we can try to clone those out, but we find this time it just creates a kind of smudge or a blur and hasn't really done a good job of that. So instead I'm going to take that into Photoshop. You can press Command and E on your keyboard or Control and E if you're on a PC. And that'll open up your image in Photoshop where we can try and remove these people. So the first tool we can try and use is Content Aware Fill. So I'm just going to use the lasso tool just to draw around the elements that I want to remove. So it's going to be these people and their tents as well. And we can select these people too. And then we go to Edit and Content Aware Fill. And that will bring this separate window up, and we can zoom in there to see what that is doing. And that's not a bad job. If we look here on the left hand side, we can see the areas in green are the areas that Photoshop is sampling from. It's looking at those areas and trying to use those to clone out the area that we don't want. And we can manipulate that to an extent. We can rub out this green area if we want, or if we press Alt on our keyboard, we can also add to that as well. And that will slightly change the cloned area. And that's not too bad of a job, so I'm going to click OK. And that's looking alright. And we can save that and close it. And that will take us back into Lightroom, and we'll see that we've got the edit applied to our image in Lightroom there. So we can have a look at another example. So this is down at Durdle Door, and we've got some people down here. It's very difficult to get a shot in the evening down at Durdle Door because it's such a popular place. Lots of tourists. It's not too bad in the morning if you go early in the middle of summer, but in the evening it's very busy and you're going to get people in your shot. So we can take this one into Photoshop once again. We'll try the same technique. So just lasso tool around the subjects we want to remove. I'm actually going to leave the girl here with her hand raised. She was actually posing for somebody else taking a photo, but I just thought it looked good, and it, again, if you feel it adds to the scene, then why not leave them in there? There's a couple of people in the water here, just some heads bobbing up above the water. And we'll go to Edit, Content Aware Fill, and once again, pretty good. But we have found that we've got some edges just around the area where we have used Content Aware Fill. And we can tidy those up just using the clone stamp tool. So it's just here on the left, about halfway down. And we can increase the size of our brush, again using the square bracket keys. And we use Alt on our keyboard to select an area that we want to clone from. So I'll clone from a nearby area, just here. And I can just start to paint over that. And it just tidies that up a little bit and makes it look a little bit more plausible. And probably just a little bit here as well, and there. I can bring that little bit of wave just up there. That's looking a lot better now. Once again, I can save that, and we're back in Lightroom where we can apply more edits if we want to. But there are situations where the automated tools, such as Content Aware Fill, are just not going to work. If we look at this shot, this was taken at Padley Gorge, and I was using a wide angle lens. Quite a nice shot looking up the river there with the waterfalls. And I knew there was someone else there taking photos at the time, but I didn't realise that with the wide angle lens, I've actually captured him in this shot. It was quite dark on the back of the screen, and he's just sneaked in there on the right hand side. And the problem with this shot is we've got the foliage, these leaves, just in front of him, and they're quite complex, and if we use content aware fill on that, it's just not going to work. We can take it into Photoshop and have a look at that. So we can zoom in on the man just down here in the corner, and the reason it's difficult to use content aware fill in this situation is because we've got the foliage, the green leaves here in front, and content aware fill struggles when you've got complex imagery in front of your subject. If we just use the lasso tool again, just draw around him. And then we go to edit, content aware fill. We'll see it doesn't do a terrible job, but we end up with this big area of texture, which doesn't look quite right. And also we've got areas of the tree which are bleeding into that texture, so we don't have a defined edge along the trunk there. And I think we can do better with manual tools. So what we're going to need to do is select all of those leaves, and we can do it in various ways. One way is to use the magic wand tool. I've got a tolerance of 40 set up here, and that'll allow me just to select areas, and because they're green and contrasting quite nicely against the background, we can start building up our selection that way. But sometimes if we haven't got enough contrast, when we select, it'll end up selecting all of the background there like that. So what you can also do is use the lasso tool. I used the freehand lasso tool before. If you've got a steady hand, you can do it that way. Or you can use the polygonal lasso tool, and that'll allow you just to click points and add to your selection that way. And the way I'm adding to my selection is by holding the shift key on my keyboard before I start my extra selection area, and that'll allow me just to add it to the current selection that I have. And finally, you can use the magnetic lasso tool, so that will actually try and snap to the edges of the subject that you want to select. So if I just start to go along the edge of this stem here, you'll see that the line actually snaps to it magnetically. So that can be quite useful too. Now basically there isn't an easy way to do this, it's going to take time, and rather than spend 20 minutes boring you on this video, I'm just going to show you one that I made earlier. So if I just hide my background layer, you can see what I did was, with my selected area, I duplicated that selection onto its own layer. So you can do that by pressing Command and J on your keyboard, or Control and J if you're on a Windows PC. And that basically copies that area, and it will be over the top of your background area. What that allows you to do, if I just create a new layer between those two, is add pixels and extra imagery in between the foliage and our background layer. And what I'm going to do is use the clone stamp tool now to clone areas of the background over the man, but crucially not over the leaves, because remember they're on the top layer. So we can start to build this up. You can take a bit more time than this, but you'll see how this starts to cover up the background in a more plausible way than if we were using the content aware fill tool. Bring some of those dark areas across here perhaps. And eventually, once you've filled in all those areas, we've got something that doesn't look too bad at all. So that's about it for this video. Thanks a lot for watching everyone. If you found it useful, then please give me a thumbs up down below. And if you are new to the channel and you're not yet subscribed, then please consider doing so. As I always say, you can click down here on the big red button or over here on my face, and that way you'll keep up to date with everything I'm doing each and every week. There's a new video every Sunday morning, 10 AM UK time. So until next week, thanks a lot everyone, and bye for now.